18-year-old at the center of the Timberview High School shooting is home with family, released on bond from the Tarrant County Jail. Timothy Simpkins left custody late this afternoon.
So as soon as I got on the floor, I texted my mom, and you just had to text.
It was certainly a message no parent ever wants. This terrifying text exchange just moments after shots were fired.
A Senate committee deadlocks on the nomination of Suffolk County DA Rachel Rollins to U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts.
Responsibility as a United States Senator is to ensure that we do not confirm pro-criminal activists into the office of United States Attorney.
Welcome back to the channel. This is Anna's Thoughts and Musical Parodies, and I am Anna, your hostess. Thank you so much for being here today.
As always, if you would like to support what I do here, you can check out the merch and exclusive footage page of the website that will be linked in my description for several different ways that you can do just that. Thank you so much in advance to anyone who decides to support, and please enjoy today's video. So this is part 2 of the last video that I made that you might want to go and watch first, based on Matthew chapter 24, verse 12, which says, "And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold." So according to The Sun, school shooting suspect Tim Simpkins celebrated after being freed from Tarrant County Jail on a $75,000 bond, while some of his alleged victims remained in the hospital. The 18-year-old was celebrating one day after allegedly shooting a 15-year-old boy 7 or 8 times. And so according to reporting, this whole shooting occurred in response to a fistfight between 18-year-old Timothy and a boy who was 3 years younger than him. The 15-year-old boy victim was struck multiple times and was originally listed in critical condition at a hospital. Another victim was a pregnant teacher who was injured in a fall, but thankfully did not need to be hospitalized. There were 4 victims altogether, including a teen female who suffered a small abrasion, and a 25-year-old English teacher who did suffer from a gun wound, as reported by NBC DFW. His name is Calvin Petit, and he suffered a bullet to the shoulder that narrowly missed his aorta. He is being considered a hero by many because the way that he ended up getting shot was by running into the classroom to break up the fight between Zacchaeus Selby, who was the 15-year-old, and the alleged gunman Timothy Simpkins. According to other reporting that I saw on this case, including statements from Timothy's family, apparently he came from a pretty wealthy family and had originally been mostly raised in private school. Apparently he was getting robbed at his public school that he went to mostly just to be able to play sports, according to what they said. I guess he drove a nice car, had nice clothes, and he had some issues with the kids at the new school. So what's weird to me is that he had been having these issues multiple times already, and the family can obviously afford to put him in a private school, but they're keeping him in the public school despite all these continual issues. So it was a total lack of preventative care, you might say, in this situation that led to a tragic shooting incident. The attorney on his case also downplayed the incident quite a bit and, in my opinion, hardly showed any remorse at all for the victims.
Obviously, what happened yesterday was very tragic. I believe that it being portrayed as the standard issue school shooting is simply a media issue and not a legal issue. There are numerous school shootings that have occurred across this country, which are tragic. All school shootings are tragic. However, in this situation, this was not someone who was just out to go and shoot up a school and had made up their mind, hey, I'm upset and I'm just going to shoot anyone I see. That was not the situation here.
So she said it was tragic a couple times, but was using pretty broad generalizations, and it seemed somewhat to be empty platitudes to me because her main focus was really on how Timothy was reacting as a victim of bullying. In my memory of other school shootings, it seems like that usually is the case. Not that it's ever excused for going around and shooting people, but I think usually the people who do that feel like outcasts. They feel like everybody looks down on them, all that type of stuff. So this doesn't really seem like a new type of incident to me. I also saw reported that when Timothy was released on bond, he did have an ankle bracelet on. I have no idea how long he's on house arrest for or any of that. But I had a feeling when I saw that it was going to be a pretty cushy ride for him because of the way that his parents came across. They seemed just really protective of him, I guess, and like they were kind of excusing what he did. They did say that it wasn't right, it wasn't okay for him to use a gun to react, but they were just really focusing on how he was a victim and he was just trying to protect himself and all that stuff, when obviously there are so many other ways to deal with bullying, as hard as it would be. Like I said before, they could have taken him out of the school after this happened just, a couple times instead of several times. But I feel like the overall main takeaway from this and what makes it really a case of lawlessness in my mind is that it seems pretty clear that this is a situation of favoritism based on race from the legal system. If you think of Kyle Rittenhouse, for example, he was a 17-year-old who shot a few different people in obvious self-defense when these people were coming after him, possibly threatening to kill him in, a huge mob. He was literally on the ground fighting for his life and just had to end some other people's lives in order to save his own. And in that situation, there were just countless adults, making death threats against this 17-year-old. And in this situation, that was pretty similar, except that this guy, Timothy, wasn't really having his life threatened as far as I could tell. He just got into some fist fights, and he didn't kill anyone, thankfully, but the teacher came close to potentially being killed. And in this situation, I have not really seen any major outrage in all of the research that I've done. I've seen some negative feedback from some other channels similar to mine, but in the mainstream, I really haven't seen much of any outrage. So, I think in the grand scheme of things, this is just, another one of the many attempts to pit black and white people against each other and just try to wreak chaos in the world. And so I think the correct response to it is to not respond the way that they want us to, by having resentment and hatred towards black people if we're white or vice versa, but to do what Jesus would do and just love and forgive each other despite all of the injustice that is being done in order to try to pit us against each other.
And unfortunately, more and more situations like this are likely to occur if current District Attorney of Massachusetts, Rachel Rollins, gets through successfully on her nomination to become U.S. Attorney. As you can see here, she actually came out with a list of crimes that she would always decline to prosecute. And she had said regarding the Demick situation that we must carefully decarcerate the prisons due to the nature of the facilities and the potential for people getting sick. But to my memory, it didn't seem like any of this was really done very carefully and actually caused a lot of problems.
She also comes across to me as basically a type of BLM activist.
Honestly, why I ran for district attorney is actually for the moment we're in right now. I believe there are voices that very often come in contact with law enforcement that weren't being heard. What is distressing for certain communities is when we pay into a system just like everyone else and it fails us more than others, not always, but more than others. It's just frustrating. And what we need is bold leadership. My profession district attorneys, why communities are so outraged is after these officers engage in this behavior, the DA turns away and pretends that he or she didn't see what just happened.
Potentially to her credit, she did say this around 9 months ago regarding the George Floyd riots.
It is hard to see these peaceful protests turn violent.
Under no circumstances are we honoring George Floyd's memory when you are breaking into Uggs and stealing boots. Those individuals not only dishonor George Floyd's memory, but they dishonor the tens of thousands of peaceful protesters who came here with good intent. And I have spoken to business owners, and I do not wish them any harm whatsoever. That glass will be replaced. Those items will be replaced. And those individuals will be held accountable.
I say that potentially this is to her credit because this was said almost a year ago now, and I did a lot of digging in a couple different search engines, and I couldn't find any specific circumstances where this actually came true, for Massachusetts. So hard to say if it was really genuine or not. And here's a word from Senator Ted Cruz on the topic of Rachel Rollins.
To be the U.S. Attorney. Well, let's look at her record. First of all, Ms. Rollins, in February, she was very candid that she came into the job of DA as a crusader. Here's what she said, quote, "If you want to change the criminal legal system, become a prosecutor." Why? She explains why. Because you have, quote, "the power to determine charges and what crimes to decline to prosecute." So that's what Ms. Rollins tells you matters about a prosecutor. The power to say, I won't prosecute these crimes. Well, let's look in writing, and I will say this document, it is entitled Appendix C, SCDAO, Declination and Diversion Policy. Boy, what an incredibly boring title, designed to mask a horrific policy.
I was unfortunately unable to find that document that he mentioned, but this is a list from the page that I showed you at the beginning of this section of all the crimes that she will not prosecute. They are trespassing, shoplifting, larceny under $250, disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, receiving stolen property, minor driving offenses, including operating with a suspended or revoked license, breaking and entering where it is into a vacant property or where it is for the purpose of sleeping or seeking refuge from the cold. That's the only one that seems decent. Wanton or malicious destruction of property, threats, except for domestic violence, minor in possession of alcohol, drug possession with intent to distribute, so she's not going to prosecute drug dealers. A standalone resisting arrest charge, i.e. cases where a person is charged with resisting arrest and that is the only charge. A resisting arrest charge combined with only charges that all fall under the list of charges to decline to prosecute, e.g. resisting arrest charge combined only with a trespassing charge. And at the bottom of her official Rachel Rollins for District Attorney page, it says, instead of prosecuting, these cases should be outright dismissed prior to arraignment, treated as a civil infraction for which community service is satisfactory, restitution is satisfactory, or community-based no-cost programming, job training, or schooling is satisfactory. I probably don't even need to explain to you how this is clearly a case of lawlessness being promoted from the top down that will ultimately just encourage more people to commit more crime, and sometimes they will even be rewarded with things like free education. So, in conclusion, it is a sick, twisted world that we live in that seems to be getting more and more that way. And in the Bible, Jesus told us to be as wise as serpents, which is why I look into this information and share it, but also to be as gentle as doves. We should not be responding in outrage and violence, but really just try to use this knowledge as power to be aware of how we're being played and to do our best to overcome evil with good. Thank you again so much for being here today. Since you liked the video enough to make it all the way to the end, don't forget to click the thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to support what I do here, check out the link that will be in the description. And make sure that you're subscribed. Have a wonderful night, afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time zone you are in, and I will see you next time.